Helluva Boss to me is a show that I have such a strong love-hate relationship for. Like, the toxic codependency I have for this series is insane. Because one minute I'll be just thinking like, oh my gosh, this show is so pretty. I love this so much. The next I'm just like, God, the writing is not good. Like, really, there are characters from the show I really enjoy, and I think visually, like I said before, the show is absolutely stunning. But after season 1, the writing just feels like it's been going down this slippery slope, and it's just getting more complex and more just tonal whiplash all the time. And it really doesn't help that I don't really find any interest in the main lead couple within Stolas and Blitz's relationship. This is a topic that I could spend an entire video talking about, but honestly, the way it feels like the story is bending over backwards to frame Stolas as completely innocent really bothers me. This is a large part just personal preference when it comes to storytelling, but I think Helluva would have been a lot better if Stolas was a central antagonist. I found the aspect of Blitz literally getting screwed over by the upper class blackmailing him a lot more compelling than,
oh my gosh, they're childhood soulmates, wow! Aren't they so cute? Look at how cute they are! OMG, I know that they were just fighting 5 minutes ago, but look at them, they're so cute!
Speaking of Stolas, you want to know what character that was completely watered down and butchered and flattened just for the sake of making Stolas look better? It's Stella. Like, this really isn't a hot take. All the female characters in this show are either extremely one-note, unintentionally abusive, which, I'm talking about Luna there. I really do not like Luna. For me, Luna is genuinely my least favorite character in this show, possibly my least favorite aspect of the entire show. It is genuinely shocking how horrible of a person she is due to the inconsistencies of the writing. Like, moments that are meant to develop her character just make her worse in retrospect.
Fuck, Fizz was right. I'm gonna die alone, aren't I? Just a wrinkly, old, weathered waste. Will you be there, Looney?
Be where?
It's lonely. I'm gonna die alone.
I'll be there, Dad.
Good throw, honey. I'm so proud of you!
Completely unrelated side tangent. Have you guys noticed that the new character for the Kung Fu Panda 4 movie looks like a fusion of Judy Hopps and Luna? I am literally shaking and shitting in fear thinking about when the first trailer drops and how it's going to absolutely implode the internet. It's going to make my timeline absolutely living hell. I absolutely hate this character's design so much just because of how it's going to destroy the internet. Anyway, you didn't click on this video because you wanted to see me complain about these other characters. You wanted to see me talk about a certain little country girl. Millie is barely her own character. It really feels like all of her traits and personality is completely centered around Moxie. I would describe Millie's main traits as being skilled in combat and also having occasional issues with her anger. But these are two traits that I feel are most of the time only brought up when it directly relates back to Moxie. It feels like a reoccurring thing that will happen in this show, that there's an episode that appears like it's going to be Millie-centric that just ends up being entirely about Moxie. And I've seen Has-Been Hotel and Vivzy Pop herself argue that Has-Been Hotel is female-led, while Helluva Boss is male-led, hence why Millie is written the way she is. And to me, this claim feels like a scapegoat that is used to avoid the criticism that Helluva receives for how it writes its female characters. The women in Helluva are often either poorly written or extremely dumbed down, while the male characters in Has-Been are absolute fan and staff favorites. Has-Been Hotel has not even come out yet, and Angel Dust has an entire music video and comic that shares depth into his character and explores his backstory more. While Helluva Boss has had 15 entire episodes, an entire season and a half to explore Millie's character, and they still haven't really done so in any meaningful way. And both Angel Dust and Millie are part of the secondary cast. They are not the main characters. They are not Blitz or Charlie. I want to be clear, I'm not trying to make a claim that anyone who has worked on either of these shows is misogynistic. I just think that there is a clear bias going on here that a lot of fans ignore. With all that in mind, I'm going to be delving into the most significant episodes that I feel best showcase my problems with Millie. Starting with... This episode really does feel like the first major sidestep for the potential of Millie's character. This entire episode is about the IMP crew going to the Harvest Moon Festival, in which they're also visiting the entirety of Millie's family. It's really odd to me that the rest of the main cast and Helluva Boss within Luna, Moxie, and Blitz and the familial relationships are all a major part of their characters and development, while Millie has this episode where we literally meet her entire family and they just don't do anything with it. And it's not like Millie's family life is just all sunshine and rainbows either. At the end of the episode, we literally see Millie's parents yelling at her because she was hurt and didn't fight well enough. And while this could have been a great character moment for Millie, instead, it just immediately turns the spotlight to Moxie. And now suddenly, instead of it being about Millie and her struggles with her family, it's about Moxie and him trying to be accepted by Millie's parents. Aside from this episode being the introduction to Stryker, which, to be fair, I do really like the Stryker stuff in this episode, it's just another example of the many episodes where it's Moxie being tortured in the efforts of trying to get the approval of the people he looks up to. The whole husband tries to gain his parents-in-law's approval thing is a trope that has been done in Redia to death, and I don't think Helluva does anything special here that justifies it being done over something with Millie. Especially when you consider Helluva doing this overused trope doesn't actually add anything to Moxie's character that we didn't already know from his relationship with Blitz. Like, wow, what a surprise. Millie's parents also find Moxie pathetic, just like Blitz does. Wow, this is amazing. While I think the script should absolutely address Moxie and Millie's parents' tension between each other, I don't think it had to be the main plot. It really feels like Millie's dynamic with her parents is interesting, but they don't do anything with it outside of just jokes or, again, moments to develop Moxie. I especially think that Millie's sister Sally Mae could have had a lot more of a prominent role in this episode instead of kind of just being there. She kind of just shows up, says a couple of punchlines, and then leaves, which is a shame because a lot of people, including myself, find this character very endearing. It really is a shame because I found Sally Mae and Millie's dynamic to be a really interesting one, even though it is only addressed for like a few seconds in this show. And I think the likelihood of Sally Mae ever returning is pretty low, so the fact that this is all they did with her character is just kind of disappointing. Moving on to another episode I have major issues with Millie's characterization in. This is another episode that I felt like was going to be a really strong episode for Millie, which just ended up being an entirely Moxie-centric episode. However, unlike Harvest Moon, I feel like the fact that this episode is Moxie-centric makes sense. I don't really have an issue with the fact that this episode is Moxie-centric, I just have an issue more so with the role that Millie plays in it. The way this episode opens is like, wow, Millie seems to have a lot of issues with her ex Chaz. I wonder what their history is. I wonder why she hates him so much. He must have done something completely awful to her. We get to see Moxie's history with Chaz, but when it comes to Millie, we don't really get anything about their history. In fact, despite it being mentioned in passing that Chaz and Millie are exes, it really feels like the main reason why Millie is so mad at Chaz is because of how he treated Moxie, how he's currently treating Moxie. With that in mind, for what reason are Chaz and Millie exes in this episode? It's not like if Chaz and Millie didn't have a shared history, Millie's anger in this episode would be unjustified. This is a guy who abused her husband in the past and is currently trying to marry him for the sake of getting his daddy's money. But Axel, I hear you shout through the computer screen, shaking and shitting and farting and crying. Wouldn't Millie and Chaz not having shared history contradicts your previous claims and mean that her character in this episode would just be entirely centered around Moxie? Which, yeah, I fully agree. I don't think that this episode should have been entirely centered around Millie being angry for Moxie, but that's what they did in this episode. Even if they say that Millie and Chaz are exes, if you don't actually do anything with it, it's just adding artificial layers to Millie's character to cover up the fact that she has nothing. And while I guess you could argue the only reason why Blitz slept with Chaz, the main thing that got Chaz's lie uncovered was because he had a history with both Millie and Moxie, that to me just feels like Millie being given a trait so it can benefit the male cast once again. Like, did we really need an entire song about Chaz trying to seduce Moxie when this time could have been used to expand Millie and Chaz's history and how it affects Millie to this day? I think I would prefer Millie development over this stupid shark guy making the same joke he's been making this entire episode for an entire song. And then we get yet another segment of, oh, really cool animation where Millie is trying to save her husband for like, what, the third time? I think this is the third time this has happened in this show. Like, okay, with that episode over, moving on to the next Millie episode. Wow, I sure hope this one develops her character in a meaningful way that isn't complete and utter bullshit pulled out of thin air at the last minute to make up for her lack of character. This episode makes me so gosh darn mad. Like, wow, this episode is officially acclaimed to be Millie-centric. Is this the moment we've been waiting for? Are we finally gonna get some real development for Millie?
And for once, I feel like I'm important.
What? It is really bad. I really, really do not like this episode. It is one of my, if not my absolute least favorite in the entire show. Why was this episode, out of all episodes, the one they chose to make Millie-centric? It should have been about Blitz and his sister. Are you kidding me? This is a plot point that is pulled out of nowhere and they spend barely any time on in the one episode they do adjust it in. Why on earth are these cringy camp shenanigans the A-plot? I don't understand. This is not enjoyable to watch. This is cringy as hell. I don't want this. This episode is just the 50th example of Moxie being tortured for an entire episode. I don't like it. The stuff with Millie, In concept could have been great, but in execution it's awful. It makes no sense. Before this point, Millie always gave the impression of being someone who is very self-confident, someone who doesn't really take shit from anyone, who will kick some ass if she ever feels like they're disrespecting her in any way. And you're telling me this character was actually secretly insecure? Someone who felt like she was being overlooked and not respected? This character, Millie, out of all the cast. In the show, Blitz seems to respect her. In fact, everyone who she talks to seems to respect her. It's not like she's ever put down or anything or made to feel like she's unimportant. Even from what we see from her family life, like, yes, her parents are rough on her, but they don't ever make her feel like she's overlooked or anything. They give her attention. In fact, she's the only one of her siblings who was singled out for being so violent that she was literally banned from the Harvest Moon Festival contests. In fact, I have to assume since Millie grew up in the Wrath Ring, somewhere where your combat abilities is what gives you value, everyone probably knew about Millie. I doubt that she was ever overlooked at all in her community growing up. At least that's just what I assume, since they didn't give us any context to Millie's life growing up because they were so busy focusing on Moxie in this episode. It would be different if in Unhappy Campers, Millie phrased it like, no one likes me unless I'm being violent, but people seem to like me for who I am here. But she doesn't phrase it like that. She phrases it as if she's always overlooked and ignored by everyone, which is not the truth at all, unless you're looking at it from a meta perspective, as if they're trying to say in this episode, Millie has been ignored by the narrative up until this episode, which is true. But why would Millie be saying that? She isn't aware of the narrative. So this episode just makes Millie come off as kind of selfish, like self-centered. Like, you're literally living your husband's dream right now and you're acting like a child. Why would Millie, someone who is already valued and respected, put so much of her self-worth on the opinions of teenagers? This episode's plot would have made more sense if either the roles were reversed or if it was with Luna and Moxie instead of Eminem. Because Luna is someone who we actually saw struggle to make social connections and who would care about being popular. Not to mention Moxie and Luna's dynamic is something that is mainly used for laughs, and this episode could have been a great opportunity to expand their dynamic and develop them some more, but instead we get a half-assed attempt of trying to make Millie a character, which really just makes her extremely unlikable and out of character. Now, Helluva Boss isn't over yet. It's not like they've lost their opportunity to never make Millie have real development, but I just doubt that they're gonna do that. Unhappy Campers just kind of permanently ruined Millie's character for me. I don't think they're gonna be able to fix this. I hope they can. I really do hope they can, because this is a show that I want to see succeed. But it just, season 2 has just been getting worse and worse, and it's all just so disappointing. With all that in mind, I want to explain some of my ideas in this video about how I would rewrite and reimagine Millie if I was in charge of her character. Now, a lot of this is just going to be concepts. If I was to go in and actually properly rewrite these episodes, it would probably turn out a lot different than what I'm about to say. This is just kind of me rambling about like what I would have liked to see in Millie's character, you know? I also wanted to say a lot of this is just my own personal preferences when it comes to character development and storytelling, and also character design, since I'm also going to be redesigning Millie here just because I thought it would be a fun challenge. If you already adore Millie as she is in the show, that's fine. If you hate my interpretation of Millie, that's also fine. Everyone gets different experiences and opinions from the media they watch. This is just me having my fun own personal interpretations of the media I enjoy in my own self-indulgent ways. So of course, that brings the question, how would I handle Millie differently? Okay, so after all that rambling, I'm finally to the part of the video where I'm actually drawing. Starting off with just Millie's character design, I have a few issues with her design. Overall, I feel like Millie has a very strong character design. I just don't feel like it really reflects her character. Like, maybe I'm just a little smooth-brained, but like, I knew she had a country accent, but it didn't really hit me that she was supposed to be an ex-farmer, because her outfit doesn't really make me think farmer. It just looks like a personal style choice. To start, right off the bat, I really wanted to make Millie be buff. Not necessarily like bodybuilders levels, but just like I wanted her to have a considerably larger build, especially in comparison to Moxie. I wanted to like accentuate the idea that Moxie is very small and frail in comparison to his wife, who constantly has to rescue him. So he'd be like this super tiny guy whose wife can pick him up with one arm, you know? I've had people express to me that they like that Millie and Moxie have matching designs, so they look like they're part of a set, like they're literally made for each other. But personally, especially because a large chunk of this video is me wanting to give Millie her own separate character outside of being attached to Moxie, I wanted to give her design that reflects her background rather than it made to match Moxie. I wanted to give her an outfit that had a lot more of a country flair to it to really zoom in on that aspect of her character. Her pants specifically, I really wanted to look like old worn out jeans that are frayed and dirty at the bottoms, which ended up on me cutting back on the amount of rips in her jeans just so the design didn't look super cluttered. I gave her goat eyes because Satan is often associated with goat imagery, and I'm pretty pretty sure that Satan rules for the Wrath Ring in Helluva. If I'm wrong, then I don't know, like, you can beat me up. Here's your free card. Something else that bothers me about Millie's design is how her tooth gap is drawn, especially in the Disney-pop art style, which causes characters to do really exaggerated large smiles, and it just makes the tooth gap look odd. And while the tooth gap is cute, I love when characters have tooth gaps in their design. I also have a tooth gap. I love it so much. I ultimately decided, since this version of Millie, I really wanted to have like a rough exterior kind of look to her, I decided to give her a missing tooth. Due to being raised in the Wrath Ring, a lot of her self-value was placed on her physical abilities, often causing her to overestimate said abilities and end up getting into unnecessary fights where she ends up hurting herself. I gave her a lot of scarring to reflect this, along with the aforementioned missing tooth. That all pretty much leads into how my Millie would change personality-wise. Her personality would still be generally the same, however, I'd really want to focus in on her impulsivity and rage problems. Having moments of her using anger management techniques in episodes, making it clear that rage is something that she clearly struggles with and greatly affects her day-to-day life. Even have Moxie reassure her in moments of her rage. Show that Moxie is there to help Millie to be her best self, just as Millie is often there to reassure Moxie of his self-worth. I also think giving her anger management issues could lead to a moment in the series which Millie tries to teach Luna some of her anger coping methods she picked up. Since both these girls seem to have issues with their anger, Millie's would be more controlled while Luna's would be completely unchecked, and Millie would try to like help her. I think that would be an interesting character dynamic between the two. I'll be keeping the whole Millie feels like she is an important thing that was addressed in Unhappy Campers here. However, I'd like to give additional context to why she feels that way. Millie, from what we see, appears to have a very large family. So here I'd like to think she's somewhere smack dab in the middle of her siblings. Not quite the eldest, not quite the youngest, nor the most combat skilled among her siblings. All of which causes her to often be shunned and overlooked by her parents for her other siblings. I'll get into more of that in a minute. I ended up making an entirely new character for this part of Millie's character, and I'm gonna expand upon that in just a minute in the next part of this video. For now, let's all take a look at the final Millie design I ended up with. Wow, isn't she amazing? I feel like I'd be fully satisfied if I redid this design one more time, but oh my gosh, Clip Studio Paint has crashed like 3 different times while I was doing the line art for Millie here, and I am not doing it again. I'm sorry. I'm still happy with how her design turned out though, so yeah, moving on to the next part of funny little demon Millie. So yeah, I decided I wanted to give Millie a twin sister. I wanted her to basically be seen in the family as like the quote-unquote better version of Millie. Maybe she even like has a husband or something whose name is Max, who's like the cooler Moxie. Growing up, their parents would constantly accidentally call Millie Mia, but never the other way around. All of Millie's siblings are always competing for the parents' attention all the time, but the fact that she's a twin does not help her stand out from her other siblings. Millie would constantly try to push herself on the farm, pick a bunch of hobbies, just do anything to make herself stand out from her sister. But constantly, Mia would notice that Millie was doing a new thing, she'd do the same thing, except better, and then she'd be given all the attention while Millie is just in her shadow. Mia herself is extremely two-faced, like, the kind of person who everyone worships, but once you get to know her, or rather you don't fit her standards, then she will treat you like garbage behind closed doors. Like, she'll use other people to prop herself up because she's just like addicted to that attention and everyone loving her. I don't think Mia was always like this. I don't think she always treated her sister so horribly. I think it was something where the competitiveness became more and more like violent, and more tensions arose between the two, up until an inciting incident, which I will get into later, which basically made them mortal enemies. Because Millie just didn't have any attention growing up and she felt so lonely, she ended up sleeping around with a lot of different men in like late high school, just out of desperation to just like feel belonging, to feel important to someone. She just wanted a meaningful relationship with someone, but she just became known around town as like the quote-unquote easy lay. And all the men would pursue her just for the sexual gratification. She'd be used and then ghosted, and this was something that repeated for just like years. This all contributes later down the line to why she's so protective over Moxie, because she feels like Moxie is the only person who actually took the time to get to know her and values her for the person she is. Before she met Moxie, the longest lasting relationship she had ever been in was with none other than Chaz. Millie and Chaz had dated for, let's say, about like half a year, give or take, all up until Millie decided to invite over Chaz for the Harvest Moon Festival. Millie competed in the pain games like she usually did every year, but so did her sister, which caused her to get constantly upstaged, to get angrier and angrier at her sister throughout the night. And Chaz was watching from the sidelines, cheering Millie on, seemingly, but in reality, his eyes were wandering a bit. This all ultimately ends with Millie walking in on Chaz cheating on her with her sister. This is the aforementioned inciting incident between Millie and her sister that made them become enemies. Millie broke up with Chaz on the spot, and then it broke out into this huge physical violent fight between her and her sister. For those viewers who have been watching the speed paint, you may have noticed that Mia does not have a tail. This is because during the fight, Millie was in such a blind, violent rage that she ended up biting off her own sister's tail. Not long after this, Millie decided to move away from the farm just because she really needed an escape from everything that had just happened. So Millie moves into the city, and eventually she meets Moxie. They have like a super cute, sweet, meet cute, slow burn romance, and eventually they get married, and it's awesome. Anyway, here is Mia's final design. I really like how it turned out. She's so cute. I love her. I gave her like the opposite eyes of her sister because I thought it was clever. But yeah, cool. Moving on to the next part, Something I didn't realize until it was already too late was that Mia kind of had a lot of parallels to Veronica and also Barbie. But like, okay, first of all, I decided that yes, this is intentional because I want Millie and Blitz to have a stronger dynamic in this like hypothetical little concept I'm brewing up here. And also, I wanted to make Mia be a part of Veronica's little crew. And I know Mia is not a succubus, but I don't know. She gets involved with Veronica somehow through shenanigans, and now they are best friends. They are besties. They are mean girls who talk shit behind you in the halls. Actually, though, like Millie seems to be so fond of Blitz in the cartoon, despite their dynamic basically being non-existent. I want them to both be spiteful towards the same group of people. I want Blitz and Millie to have that connection, gosh darn it. The entire Spring Broken episode would be Millie and Blitz being mutually bitter about Veronica and her crew. Millie becomes insanely invested in the bet. She becomes so distracted killing people in a desperate attempt to finally upstage her sister in something that Moxie gets eaten by the fish, and she doesn't even realize at first. And it would just be a little moment of development for Millie there, when she realizes she let her anger and spitefulness get the better of her, and she regrets letting Moxie get lost in the crowd and gets so drunk that he couldn't defend himself. A little, like, I choose love and being happy over being spiteful and hateful, And she also gets to gloat in front of her sister because they end up winning the bet anyway, so it all works out in the end. Millie gets a little more lesson, and Blitz doesn't. He just gets to brag in front of his ex, and that's awesome for him, so good for him anyway, I guess. How much further Mia and Veronica being linked together would affect the plot, I'd have to think about more, but mainly I just wanted to do this because I really wanted Blitz and Millie to have this kind of, like I said before, I want them to have a stronger bond from this, I just had to put more thought into it. I just wanted to cook up a little thought idea. Yeah, I wanted to cook up a little thought idea. Yeah, great, awesome, here's the finished thing. For this episode, I'd want the whole plot of Moxie striving for Millie's parents' approval to be replaced with Millie's own. This would be the episode that fully addresses Millie's insecurities of being overlooked as she signs up for the pain games to compete with her sister, who's also visiting for the first time in years, which her parents discourage as she just end up losing again or humiliating herself, which only makes her all the more motivated to participate. Which, yes, in this situation, Millie was never banned from playing in the pain game. She's allowed to. Just let her do it. I also really want Sally Mae to have a much more prominent role in this episode. For most of the episode, Sally Mae would just kind of be teasing and poking fun at Millie, picking on her like we see her do in the original episode. And now Millie's dealing with backlash from both of her sisters, both her twin sister, who is being legitimately mean, and Sally Mae, who's being mean in like this sibling, teasing, loving way. Millie would proceed to lose every single match against Mia, getting angrier and angrier up until the final event, in which Millie almost actually manages to beat Mia, but at the last minute, Mia decided to cheat just so she could beat her sister. And Mia gets away with this absolutely scot-free. No one saw her cheat, and no one would believe that she would ever cheat. I mean, why would she have to cheat against her sister, who she's always better than? Everyone in the crowd starts to boo at Millie for making such brash accusations against Mia. Millie's parents even scold her, saying that she shouldn't make such horrible lies just to look better than her sister, and that she just wasn't trying hard enough. Everyone anticipates one of Millie's violent outbursts. She was known for growing up in the area, but it never comes. Instead, Millie runs away crying, absolutely devastated that she still can't beat her sister and her parents still don't believe that she is trying as hard as she can. Oh, by the way, Moxie, yeah, he didn't see this happen. I don't know. For some, maybe like on the side, like plot B, he's also trying to impress Millie's parents, and for some reason he left and he found Stryker's gun. So yeah, he's busy with Stryker right now. He's not, whatever, he didn't see it happen. More importantly, of the topic of this video, Millie ends up getting comforted by Sally Mae. I just really want to see like Sally Mae like sit down next to Millie and just have this real heart-to-heart with her sister. Millie confides that she's always been such a disappointment in her parents' eyes, and she's always been the weakest out of her siblings, even her younger siblings. Sally reassures her that their parents are just complete and utter hard asses that struggle to see a ton of value outside of one's physical ability, and that she always admired Millie for just how hard she tried. Because with Mia, that all came naturally. She never had to try really in life. Everything was handed to her on a silver platter because of her natural ability. You're the real deal, Sally would reassure. Mia has always been fake, ever since she was a kid. Sally Mae apologizes for teasing Millie and says that she was just trying to rile Millie up so she'd really put her all into competing against Mia. Because Sally Mae also really wanted to see Mia finally get taken down a step. Sally Mae and Millie laugh about this for a while before Sally says that she's really happy that Millie found someone that loves her for who she is and will always be there for her within Moxie. Which then makes Millie go, oh, shit, my husband, where the fuck is he? Maybe Sally Mae and Millie hug or something before Millie goes off to look for a husband, and that's when she runs into Stryker, who's currently attacking her husband, and the rest of the episode would basically play out the same from there. Moxie can still give his whole spiel about Millie's parents needing to respect her more, and he still gets nodded to and everything. But ultimately, I want Millie to realize that she doesn't need to be the best in her parents' eyes. She doesn't need to meet her parents' crazy expectations to be happy. After all, she already has someone who will always have her back and love her regardless of her flaws. Oh my gosh, so hi everyone. Thank you if you decided to watch that whole video. I know it was kind of rambly. It's my first time really doing anything like this. I just really wanted an excuse to talk about this show. This video was a really fun experiment for me, and I want to maybe do stuff like this in the future. Maybe not necessarily with Helluva Boss. I don't really know if I want to talk about a Helluva Boss character this much again for like a while. Maybe if I get the motivation of this video like explodes, then I don't know, I'll make another one about like Stolitz or something. If you're interested in seeing more of me, or you like my art, feel free to subscribe to me here and maybe follow me on my other platforms. I'm under Axel Lungs everywhere, and I'm most active on my Twitter and Tumblr, though all my social medias that I'm currently active on will be linked in the description. Do you, silly little viewer, have any personal rewrites in mind for any of the characters in this show? Feel free to share it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. With that, I'll be logging off and touching my daily dose of grass. I hope everyone has a hell of a good day. I'm so tired.